Welcome to the latest edition in our video interview series here at iConnect. My name is Richard Albert, and today I'm joined by Stefanus Hendrianto, a visiting lecturer at Santa Clara University School of Law. And next year, he'll be a guest scholar at the Kellogg Institute at Notre Dame University for the entire academic year. Today, Stefanus is joining us to discuss developments in Indonesian constitutional law. Stefanus, hi. Thank you so much for visiting with us today.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
Stefanus, let's begin and dive right into it. Tell us a bit about the Indonesian constitution, and the Bill of Rights.
Well, the original Indonesian constitution was adopted in 1945. And the original constitution did not contain any. And then in the year of 2000, or 1999-2000, especially after the fall of military regimes, of Suharto military regimes, there was a series of constitutional reform that took place for about 4 years, in which the parliament began to reform the constitution, the 1945 constitution, and then they adopted a list of catalog Bill of Rights included in the constitutions. So that's the background of the Indonesian constitution protection of the Bill of Rights.
What's the role of the judicial system in protecting this catalog of rights in the Constitution?
The Bill of Rights were adopted in the Constitution in the year of 2000 through the Second Amendment. And in the year of 2001, they passed the Third Amendment, which established the new Constitutional Court. Just the idea is this: the Constitutional Court was supposed to enhance the protection of Bill of Rights in the constitutions. But the court itself was not established until 2003 because there's so many negotiation between the political elite. So they waited for 2 years. Some people want to delay it until they established the court in 2003. But the court itself has a limited power. Its authority is pretty limited. Some people envision the court as the institution that can protect the Bill of Rights, but the politicians who in the parliament who design the court, they only give authority for the court to conduct statutory review, in which the court has only authority to conduct judicial review over statute, not over administrative actions or something like that. So it's a bit hard now, I think, that structurally also that for the court itself to really to protect the Bill of Rights in some way, because this authority is pretty limited.
So the Constitutional Court has been around since 2003. That's about 12 years.
Yes, correct.
What's been the performance of the Constitutional Court of Indonesia over the past, let's say, decade?
Well, there's been ups and downs of the court performance. The first 5 years of the court, especially under the first Chief Justice Jimli Ashidiki, the court is trying to play a role, what I call it, a kind of heroic court. So try to play a role of a hero here, try to solve many problems in the country. So despite its limited power, Chief Justice Ashidiki managed to capitalize that what they have, I think, in the court, and try to expand its jurisdiction and authority to review many cases. So this is the first 5 years kind of role of heroic court, when I say that. So the second 5 years under the second Chief Justice Muhammad Mahfud, he tried to play, I think, the more or less a similar role like his predecessor, Chief Justice Ashidiki. But it's hard sometimes to maintain the role of heroic court for that long. Part of it because they need to deal with the different branches of government, and also things that it's hard for the court things that to maintain that role for so long. And then Chief Justice Mahfud resigned. I think that after his first 5 years was replaced by the third Chief Justice Akil Mukhtar, and that's the court began, I think, that is declining phase for many different reasons. First, because it's hard to maintain this heroic role for so long, and the second, that Chief Justice Akil Mukhtar himself was removed from the court due to his, corruption charges. Then I think that when you have your Chief Justice removed from the court like that, yeah, really court, I think, really in the lowest level of the performance, and people really, losing trust with the court. And they try to bounce back since then. But I think that compared to 10 years ago, now the court is pretty weak now.
Stefanus, can you give us some examples of what you describe as a heroic court? Are there particular cases that come to mind in the court's first 5 years that really illustrate the heroic role that the court tried to play?
Yes, absolutely. I can give you some examples that, for instance, in the series of decisions with regard to the economic policies, in which the court tried to review the government's, the decisions or in statutory levels that privatize some industry like electricity industry or oil and gas industry and the mining industry So the court here, that tried to play the role of heroic court, got intervened in second guessing the government economic policy and struck down those legislations and those statutes, because the court believed that the privatizations, policy for the government is not really, aim for the common good and for the general welfare of the people. So here, I think the court believed that they need to intervene and second guess the government economic policy. That's one thing I can give you example.
You've mentioned 3 or 4 chief justices of the Indonesian Supreme Court. Is there a very well specified role that the chief justice is supposed to play? Or over the years, has the role of the chief justice varied dependent upon who occupied that position, depending upon the personality of the judge who occupied the role of chief justice?
Actually, the role of chief justice itself just the first among equal, like any other chief justice in different jurisdictions. But Indonesian is a bit special because when the court was established 12 years ago, this was the first, experience and experiment actually that for Indonesians, the legal, in the legal history, because none of them were trained, I think, that to conduct judicial review. So we don't have that traditions of judicial review. So when those 9 justices were elected for the first time, they really, rely on the chief justice, and the court itself, which lack of support infrastructure, rely on the strong personality of chief justice, which is the first chief justice, Jimli Ashidiki, who, he's kind of towering figure, and in the lack of tradition and lack of support like that, I think that we have to turn into a single person like him to navigate all the difficulties and challenge of this new young court. But then over the years, I think that we haven't been able to switch it more to structural or institutional approach, in the sense that institutions can function without a towering figure like Chief Justice Ashidiki. So as you say, that over the years now, I think that it depends on personality of Chief Justice, because the second Chief Justice, he's also a towering figure, and he had decorated political career because he became Chief Justice and a well-known academic. But then again, I think that when there's a new Chief Justice, the third Chief Justice, Akil Mukhtar, who is very different from his predecessor, he is not an academic like the previous 2 Chief Justice. He's a seasoned politician, and he has different vision. So we haven't been able to move beyond, I think, what happened 10 years ago. So now it depends on who occupied the office of Chief Justice.
So we're talking, as a reminder, to Stefanus Hendrianto about developments in Indonesian constitutional law, and we've been discussing about the role of the Indonesian Constitutional Court. Stefanus, you mentioned Chief Justice Akil Mokhtar, former Chief Justice Akil Mokhtar, specifically his removal procedure. Could you tell us a bit about that? Because as I understand it, it was very controversial.
Yeah, that's correct. So he was arrested in October 2013 by the Anti-Corruption Commission because he took a bribe from a party who are litigating in the court. But this is the peculiar part of Indonesian constitutional systems. We don't have the impeachment proceeding to remove Chief Justice or any, justice, associate justice of the Constitutional Court. So yeah, he was, arrested by Anti-Corruption Commission, but then he was put on trial at a district court level on the criminal charges. In some way, this is kind of, odd, because that, as we know that in many different jurisdictions, that if you want to remove, justice, associate justice, let alone chief justice, there should be, impeachment proceeding. But we don't have the proceedings. The politician who designed the court never thought about that, and so he was removed in different way. I think that he was trial in the district court level, and then he was convicted later on. So it's weird, but it's always it works. So that's what I can say about it.
It's weird, but it works to people you've said. Okay. So who is the current Chief Justice of the Indonesian Constitutional Court?
The current Chief Justice is Arif Hidayat. He's an academic also that who came to the court later on. But he's very different again, I think, that from the previous Chief Justices, especially the first two Chief Justices. He's low profile one. He's not a towering academic or towering figure like his predecessors. So his low profiles, Chief Justice, and he rarely give interview in the media like the previous two Chief Justice. In some way, maybe good, but on the other hand, also I think that some way that is showing the sign of weakness from the court, who's still recovering from the removal of the Chief Justice Akil Mokhtar.
Are you worried about the future of the Indonesian Constitutional Court?
Well, I have concerns about that because the reason is why we have so many Chief Justices is because the politician who designed the court set a very limited term for Associate Justice and Chief Justice. So Associate Justice, you only serve for 5 years and renewable for the second term for the second 5 years. But for a Chief Justice, you only serve for 2.5 years and you have to be re-elected. And this is not good for the judicial independence. And we can see this why in the last 10 years, Chief Justice Jimlia Siddiqui, he was basically, I think, that kind of removed in some way because the executive did not really like him. And the second Chief Justice also, he resigned because he knew that it'll be difficult for him to be re-elected for the second 5 years term. And if this keep going on, I think that will be, bad for, that Indonesian, judicial independence in the Indonesian Constitutional Court. I think we should, they figure out a way, that to reform this institutional, limitation, structural limitation in the court. And I hope that the current Chief Justice, he can, initiate the discussions with the legislator and some politician that something need to be changed here. Otherwise, I think that I'm afraid that the court will, racing to the bottom.
Stefanus, we've been talking about the judiciary for our conversation thus far. I wonder if we can switch over to the executive branch, because as I understand it, there are some important developments in Indonesian constitutional law happening there as well.
Yeah, sure.
So could you tell us a bit about the new president, Joko Widodo? He's known as Jokowi, right? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. It's pretty impressive.
Are there any promising signs of his leadership in Indonesia?
Well, Joko Widodo was elected as a president last summer, and he was sworn in, I think, in the fall. And when he was elected, there was, high expectations on his presidency, and there's a sign of hope, and pretty much I think like the euphoria that in United States that there's how many is that 7 years ago when Barack Obama was elected. This is a new leaders, a new kind of leaders that he was non-established figure. He was not part of the old regimes, and he was very humble beginning. And his demeanor is very, I think, that down to earth. So people have great expectations for this new president. But in the last 6 or 7 months, many people are kind of, disappointed with his leadership. Part of it, I think, that is turned out that is difficult for him to manage, I think, that national politics. Previously, he was mayor of small town in Central Java, and then he served 2 years as governor in the capital city, Jakarta. So this is his first experience to hold that national office as president. And the last 6 months, there's many difficulties that he need to deal with. I can mention 2 important debacles or 2 important issue that hot button issue that he had to deal with, and he did not handle it very well. So first, that with regard to the capital punishment. As you may heard that Indonesia was suddenly very infamous internationally because they executed so many things that foreigners were convicted for smuggling drugs. And Indonesia is being condemned internationally for these decisions. There's series of executions that took place in the last 6 months, and Jokowi did not really know how to handle this. And on the one hand, he want to show that he is a strong leader, but on the other hand, I think that he knew that this is damaging for the country, and he made sometimes that a very bad argument also in terms of constitutional perspective, because he argued that, well, this is according to constitutions and we have to impose death penalty, and we can have separate discussion about the constitutionality questions. But he has been struggling on that level in the international arena and domestically also. And secondly, there's a conflict between the police, the national police forces, national police department, and the anti-corruption commissions. President Joko Widodo nominated police officers who was suspected to involve in corruptions as the future national chief police commissioner. And the anti-corruption commissions and things that try to indict these persons, but President Joko Widodo, in the end, that continued to dominate him as the chief police commissioner. He seems caught in between the tug of war between police, department and anti-corruption commission, and he could not really handle this well either. He tried to find some peace and find a balance, but it's getting messed up because nobody really want to concede, and he cannot really handle the situation smoothly.
So Stefanus, we've talked about the judiciary, the executive. Let me ask you if you can look ahead in the next, let's say the next 5-10 years. What are some of the major constitutional questions that will need to be resolved in Indonesian constitutional law?
I think that the government relations, that's something need to be resolved, essentially the relationship between the executive and the judiciary. This all originated from the series of amendment, because in some way that we have presidential systems, but there's some feature of the parliamentarian systems also in the Indonesian constitutional constellations, in which I think that the minister can be held accountable by the parliament. Although the president, cannot be held accountable because he's elected. But in some ways, makes sometimes dysfunction. The cabinet is a bit dysfunctional because they had to, to answer to the parliament. On the other hand, also, I think there's some fear that, based on the past, that presidents might be impeached by by the parliament, which is, I think, that it's not be the case because yes, maybe about 10 years ago, but after the constitutional amendment, it's not the case anymore. But there's still some fear, and especially with the current president. And why he has some fear? Because I think that we don't have that clarity. Although I think that if we look closely at the text, yes, I think he cannot be impeached easily. There's some high threshold for that. But above all, I think that the president he has some fear because he held hostage by the parliament. Although he is elected by the people, the compositions of the parliament, I think that is very divided. So many veto players. That's why there's tendency for the president to accommodate the political parties in the parliament by, for example, appointing some of them in the cabinet as the cabinet minister. So here, presidents are being held hostage by the parliament. So I think that we need to fix this. I think that in the future, it's not only for the Constitutional Court, but also for all the politicians and scholars that we need also to think. I think that maybe things that another amendment process, which is also things that in some way for some people is quite taboo now to talk about, because after the amendment, the last fourth amendment in 2002, they said, okay, that's it, no more amendments. But I think we should begin to open the discussion again in order to fix this.
Just one more question about Indonesia, Stefanus. You've told us that the Indonesian Constitutional Court reached its high watermark in its first 5 years when it served the role of a heroic court.
Yeah.
And recently, it's weakened. It's been undermined both by itself and its office holders, its leaders, but also by the politics that surround the operation of the court. So I guess I want to ask you this. Is the state of Indonesian democracy stronger now than it was before the Indonesian Constitutional Court was created?
I will say that yes and no. Yes, insofar that we have experienced, I think, tremendous, change in the last 10 years with democratic experiments, especially with Constitutional Court. Sometimes I think that we have to admit that it works, the mechanism, the constitutional democracy, that people are begin things that to see there's check and balances here, things that on the one hand, and on the other hand also things that the executive and the legislative also sometimes is forced to comply with the court decisions. So there's some hope here, and there's a new generation also of things that are more educated lawyers and people that in Indonesia that who have more awareness about constitutional democracy. So there's a vibrant civil society also. But on the other hand, there's still a big challenge because the political elite who control, the political party and politics still from the old guard, and they pretty much, I think, that control things that the power and still, pull the strings. And the fact is, I think that in the capital punishments debate, none of the political parties in the parliament say anything about that. None of them oppose, capital punishment or say, setting position, because they, I think, that part of the, all elite from the new order regimes who still endorse or state violence in some way or another. So in that way, I think that there's a big challenge also for the new generations of lawyers and politicians, to take over from the old guard who still, hang on, to their power.
Well, before we go, Stefanus, and this, by the way, has been just fascinating. Thank you once again. Before we go, I'd like to ask what you're working on. What are you researching now? What are you writing about?
Well, my writing is my focus of writing is primarily on the Indonesian Constitutional Court, judicial politics in Indonesian Constitutional Court. But apart from that, also I'm doing some research also in general about the comparative constitutional law, especially with the role of religion in legal system, religion in politics, kind of like that from comparative constitutional perspective. So there's another, area of my interest. And for next year, I think in Notre Dame, I'm planning to write a book on judicial politics in Indonesia, especially I think the experience in the last, 10 years and last 1 decade. So hopefully that by I think that by the end of my time in Notre Dame, I'll be able to finish my manuscript. So that's my plan.
Oh, well, good luck. Good luck writing a book at Notre Dame. What a wonderful place to write a book. I hope you also have a chance to go see some football games, by the way.
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah.
Stefanus, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fascinating and an important discussion. You're sharing with the world really what's happening in Indonesia, and we're grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.